All right, I hope everybody are able to hear me properly and see the screen as well. Perfect. I think we had a slight glitch where we were unable to process the audio to your side. Now that we can process the audio over to your side, now let us go ahead and look at the questions you can expect when it comes to TCS Digital. Now, when it comes down to TCS Digital, we know that we have 1 hour to solve your question. And your question can be solved in any language of your choice from C, C++, Java, Python, or Perl. Now, to ensure that you can answer in any of these languages, the main thing we need to know is the question you can expect to solve here is something that you may not have read or something that has not been provided in any interview until now. But the logic will be somewhat similar. So whatever question is provided, you will have a similar logic to some question that has been already asked. But it will never be a same question that has been asked in any of the interviews till now. So let us look at what sort of questions can be asked. We at Quantmasters side have created a set of questions from our end, and we have collected a lot of questions and modified them from various interviews as well to ensure that we train you with these questions and you can hopefully get similar questions and answer and get selected as well. So without further delay, let us go ahead and look at what sort of possible questions can you expect. Now, when it comes down to this, as always, you can expect questions on numericals, number based questions where you have to do some manipulations, or string manipulation based questions, or you can also expect conversions between string to number or conversion between numbers to strings. Followed by this, you can also expect questions on data structures and algorithm based as well, particularly like something related to knapsack or something related to traveling salesman problem and so on. So we will go with the very basic type of questions here, that is string to number conversions or a string based questions. So the first question we're going to go with in our session as of now is something related to strings, where you need to manipulate strings in such a way that your output is very different. And the question that we are about to provide now is something which you can definitely expect, as in similar logic can be expected, because these are the medium to hard type difficulty questions, medium to hard type difficulty questions that you can expect, because you're given 1 hour of time. If it were a question to be answered within 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you can expect somewhat easier questions. So let us look at the first question that we will work through, that we will try to solve here. So your question goes something like this. Your input will be a string. Let's take a string here. I'll just use comment lines here, documentation part, just to provide you the question. So an input string will be provided. So to ensure that you're able to see it properly, I'll remove the comment lines for now. So an input string will be provided. So for instance, let us take it as digital hiring, or let me take some string like digital hiring is easy. Let's say this is the string. Now, with this string, you need to perform some particular operation. That is, you need to take the input string and I'll just use word wrap to ensure that you're all able to see the entire question together. So I'll just press enter here, that's easier. So you need to take the input string and print it in a zigzag format or zigzag fashion. So the way you have to do this is, the user will provide the string and the number of rows as input. You need to output the string into the given number of rows as a zigzag fashion output. So what exactly is this zigzag fashion? How does it exactly work? To understand it, they will also give you one input, sample input and sample output. So sample input, let's take it as digital hiring is easy. So sample output will come up like this. Now if you observe, there are two sample inputs that are given. One is the string and the other is the number of rows. So I'll take number of rows as, let's say, 10, or number of rows as 4. 4 is a smaller number, we'll easily be able to do this. I'll take it as number of rows to create as output, and this is the input string. Now sample output goes something like this. Now since you know that there are supposed to be 4 rows, I'll repeat this. Since we are supposed to have 4 rows, we are supposed to print it like this: D I G I. 4 rows are done. The moment 4 rows are done, you're supposed to go in a zigzag fashion like this. T, I'll just use one space, A, L. So you can see it comes up in a zigzag format like this. It keeps on repeating. So digital and then H, over here I, over here R. After that again I and N and then G, and then we have to write is, and then we have also to write is easy. So EASY. So this is how your output is exactly supposed to look like. Digital is easy. Now this is definitely not easy for us, but these are the kind of questions that you may just expect. Now if you observe here, your input string is this. You're supposed to have 4 rows as output: row 1, row 2, row 3 and row 4, and you're supposed to print it in this way. Now the problem here is, the moment you go from first line in output, when you print D in output, if you immediately go to the next character and go to the next line to print I, you won't be able to come back to the previous line to print L here. That can't be done. So the problem here is, if we go character by character in this string, if we print first character and go to next line to print second character, then the next line to print third, then the next line to print fourth character, we cannot go back to third, second or first character again. So we cannot print it like this. We need to find some way where we are able to print one row at a time completely. We need to somehow figure out a way to print a row completely and then go for next row, and then go for next row, and then go for next row. So this is how we are supposed to figure it out. Now there are multiple ways to do it. You can use a formula to find out in each location which character will come up and directly print that character. Or you can create a 2-dimensional array. When I talk about 2-dimensional array, what I mean is a 2-dimensional array like this, which has 4 rows and some amount of columns. When you create such a 2-dimensional array, you can use that and store all these values in it. When all these values are stored, you can then use the same to print it in the order. So that is what we will do. In our case, in our example, we will create a 2D array, a 2-dimensional string array, and within this 2-dimensional string array, we will try to store whatever is in input in this order. So we will somehow need to create this as an array. If you create it as an array, think about this. This is row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3. This is your column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So you get some amount of rows and columns. So once you get some amount of rows and columns, you get to see that it creates your format of a matrix. So all you need to do is create a matrix, somehow find the logic to store the input in this order. Once you have done that, you should be able to print it as it is. You should be able to traverse the matrix as it is and print it. Traversing and printing is the easy part for us, but the difficult part is to store the input array in this format. So we somehow need to figure out how exactly can we do this. So let us start to create a logic. Let us start to create our own logic to solve this kind of program. Once you get to know the logic to solve this kind of program, even if a modification is asked, like instead of zigzag like this, if it's asked zigzag like this, or if it's asked in any different way, you will be able to solve it. That is our whole idea. That is the intention of us, so that you can solve any such question that can come up like this. So just before we go into this question, I would also want to state, if you would like to go through more videos of ours which are technical aptitude as well as verbal, we've got a lot of programs, MCQs, a lot of different kind of questions as well. You can definitely check our channel out, like and subscribe to get notifications as well. We have a lot of programs, so you can check our channel out as well. So anyway, let's get back to our program here. Now, one thing is pretty clear. First column I can store easily. But before storing first column, I need to know how many rows and columns should be there in my array. How many rows and columns should be there? Now, just to point out, this particular program, I'll be writing it in Java. Now, you can also write this in C++ or C. The reason I'll be writing it in Java is because it is easy to create dynamic memory allocation in Java. And it is easy to work through. You don't have to struggle to create dynamic memory allocation. Because if you do it in C, you may, if you don't know dynamic memory allocation, you may end up using more memory, and you may end up getting your memory limit exceeded error. If you are from a non-IT background completely, and if you only know C, and if you want to figure out how to overcome such memory limit exceeded error, we have videos already uploaded previously where we have done a lot of programs in C. You can definitely go through those to understand how you can create similar two-dimensional arrays without the memory limit exceeding error in C. But we'll be focusing it on Java. For others who would want to know, you can also get to know how to create two-dimensional arrays in C using dynamic memory allocation, using DMA. How do you create two-dimensional arrays? You can do that and create a similar array and follow the same code that we are doing, same loop, everything same logic you can follow as well. So let's try with this one now. So first thing, to create this, I need to know how many rows are there and how many columns are there. So to get to know, rows user will enter. That is pretty clear. So user will enter the number of rows themselves. So we can easily say number of rows required is 4. But what about columns? How will I get to know how many columns are required? So to do that, it's pretty simple thing. You know how many characters you have. In your string, you have certain number of characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 plus hiring is 6, that is 13. Then 15, then 19. You have 19 characters exactly. So since you have number of characters known and how many rows also known, you can try dividing them. We know there are 19 characters. First 4 characters will go here. Next characters will go here. Then 6. Then 7, 8, 9, 10. Then 11. Then 12. Then 13, 14, 15, 16. Then 17. Then 18. And then 19. But how will I calculate this? How will we be able to find out how many columns do we need exactly? So there are different ways to do that. For our case, for our program, I'll provide a very simple way to just obtain the same. So all that we will do here is just create an array for now and add number of columns over in time. So first, let us create the very basic part of our program. The basic part of our program to begin with, let's say we'll take a program called, we'll save this as code.java. So once I've saved it as sorry, I've made one mistake. It is named as code.java.c. Let me just rename it as code.java only. So now we've got our file called code.java, where let's just use the comment lines. Done. Now we can start with our very basic things. Now we'll also create a couple of simple errors also here, just to show you when you get similar errors, how will you solve as well. Now let's start with the first very basic thing, that is reading the input and performing what we need to do. So you can read the input using scanner, but to save time, I will specify the input within my program itself. So first thing we'll do is create a public class with the same name as our file name, that is public class called code. In your digital interview, they will be providing you with the file name, so you can just use the same public class name over here. So let's create our main function, public void, public static void main with arguments. So now we've created our skeleton of the program, and now we can enter values. Now I need two input variables, that is one is a string, another is a number of rows. So I'll create an integer variable called rows, and we'll create a string called input str. Now remember, since it's Java, string starts with uppercase as it is a class. It's not just a data type as it is. So the input rows will take it, for example, 4, which we have taken up here, 4 rows. And the input string will take up the same thing that we have here, that is digital hiring is easy. Now we'll also create some test cases ahead, but before creating test cases, let us start with the very basics of this. Now I need to know how many rows I need here and how many columns I need here. Now first things up, in our simple case, one simple way you can do here is take columns as, instead of this, what we will do here is, let us not create a two-dimensional array. Forget creating two-dimensional array for now. What we will do here for now is use a completely different concept. So here, when it comes down to this, let us start with the very basics over here. So sorry for the slight delay. Now let us go over here and start with a very basic part to begin with. So the first thing, sorry for the slight delay, the first thing what we can easily do, one very easy way to solve this, as I was stating, is we don't even need to know number of columns. Let's not even worry about number of columns. Let's create just another string where we will start storing the string in this order. We'll start storing the string in this particular order as a single string, but when printing it, we will print it in such a way that we will get to know where columns exist, where we need to go to the next column, depending on the number of rows. So that is one easy way where we can do that. So let us do the exact same thing for us to begin with. Now, the first thing that I'll do here is we need a certain set of data to work with. If I don't know the length of my string, I cannot work with my code. So first thing I need to know here is length of my string. So let us try to get the length of our string here. That is, let's say, for example, to get the length of this string, since it's a class in Java, we can directly use functions of this class. So I hope all of you know which function gives us the length of the string. You can just write it down in the chat box. So if I have my input string, I have dot, as expected, length function, which will give me entire length of the string. So this length of the string we will store in a variable called length. So this is for our reference so that we have this. So just to ensure, I'll just use system.out.println just to show the length of the string. I'll just print it. Let's just compile it and run it very quickly. Let's just compile it. Code.java, and let's see if we get any errors. We shouldn't. Now let's just run it by using Java code. Now we are able to get that the length is 19. That's pretty accurate, clear. Now length part is done. Now the next thing we need to do is create an array of this length. We can create an array of any length. We can create an array of any possible length, and we will store certain values over there. But for now, what we need to do is create a string of a larger length than the array. For now, for our case, for our easier understanding, all that I will do here is just use a new string. We'll just create a new string over here, and we'll just name it something like zigzag output equals, we'll create a new string out of it. So I hope everybody knows how Java works. For those who don't know, I'll just show this with one simple example. So string in Java, you can just go through this and get to know with official documentation. I would always prefer anyone to go through official documentation, that is docs.oracle.com, so that you can get to know more. So if you really want to go a little ahead, instead of called string buffer or string builder, because strings in Java by default are immutable. Immutable means you cannot change them. So they basically are immutable in such a way that every time you write, it's going to create a new string. So instead, you can do something string builder or string buffer in Java. Now both are different, both have different features. So for anyone who wants to know more about it, they can just know the difference. What do the difference? One is for synchronization, the other doesn't offer any synchronization. So we can use string builder, which is mutable, which means you can change it. So we're going to take a simple string builder and all the functions here. You can go through all the examples here. Want to know about it. So I'll also show a couple of functions, because we will use a function. We need to append characters to it. So I'll just take this simple append works the same. So all that you have to do is just use append function, add another character. It's going to append to that string builder. So let's go ahead and without any delay create a string builder. Now before I do this, live in chat, can you let me know how do I create a string builder? If you are good with Java, those who are good with Java can just let me know, how do you create your own string builder? Simple. String builder is a class. So in string, we just use string builder as the name. That's basically it. You can name it whatever you want. That will be your new string builder. That's it. Now your zigzag output will have nothing in it. You can append anything you want. You can add something like zigzag output dot append of something like just a. After you have appended only one character, you can print it, that is system.out.println of, let's say, zigzag output. Let's see what exactly happens here. We'll remove, I'll just comment out this length code. The reason I'm going through a little bit of basics as well here is so that everyone who are a little new to these concepts can also understand it very clearly. So we have created a string builder whose length can be changed to anything we want. Now, since its length can be changed to anything we want, we can add values anywhere at any time we like. That is the reason why we created this. Now, no need for us to print or anything here. It is currently empty. Let us start with the first part. So append will always add at the end of it. Now, first thing I need to know, in my string builder, what am I supposed to store and where? So when you start your string builder, the first thing you need to do here is start with the first character. The first character will always be in the first index. After the first index, you go to the next index, which is a space. Then the next index is also a space. Then the next index is also a space. Then comes L. Why exactly 3 spaces? We need to figure out, we need to find out a logic. Why are we using 3 spaces here? And after 3 spaces, which is the character I'm supposed to add here? Both of this we need to figure out. So to understand this, I'll take 2 examples. This is an example with 4 rows. I'll take another example with 3 rows. When you do this, DIGITALHIRING. Let's take this for instance. Now, if you for 3 rows, you get 1 space. For 4 rows, you get 2 spaces. For 5 rows, if you try it, like something like this, DIGITALHI, you get 1, 2, 3 spaces. So depending on the number of rows, if rows are 5, you're getting 3 spaces. If rows are 4, you're getting 2 spaces. If rows are 3, you're getting 1 space, and so on. So depending on that, you need to figure this out. That is one simple rule. Now, apart from that rule, what am I supposed to store here? We also need to figure out what we are supposed to store here. To understand that better, I'll just write the same thing over here in a different way so that we can all understand it. I'll take the same example, DIGI. Right. So let's take this. I'll just scroll a little ahead. So now you can observe here, in this case, this is your index 0 for your original string. Please note, I'm talking about original string. Index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Similarly, index 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So total 19 characters, indices 0 to 18. Now, for our easy understanding, I'm just gonna put a border on it so that all of us can easily observe and understand it. So with this, we somehow need to figure out which character are we supposed to put in each row, because after D, once I give 3 spaces or 2 spaces here, I need to put up the character L. So how will I get to know that I'm putting up character L? This is an important question that we need to think about and answer. So let us try answering that exactly. So this is exactly what we have here. I'll just put this a little higher. Perfect. So let's just move this index above so everyone can easily observe it. So if you see here, after 0 we get 6. After 6 we get index 12. After 12 we get index 18. So you can see a pattern emerging here. You can see a pattern emerging here. So when it is 4, after index 0, we are going to index 6. After index 6, we are going to index 12. After index 12, we are going to index 18. So this is for 4 rows. Similarly, when you try for 3 rows, you're going to get different value here. That is 0, 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 will come up here. So when you try to do different values here, you will get to find a pattern here. The pattern goes something like this. When it is 3 rows, when it is 4 rows and 5 rows, it's something different. When it is 3 rows, 0, 1, 2, then third value will be here, fourth will be here. So 4 is the next index that should come up. So index should be 4. When 4 rows are used, 6 is the next index that will come up. When you use 5 rows, index 4 will be here, 5, 6, 7 and 8 is the next thing that will come up. So when you start figuring this out, you then need to find out for which row, which is the next index that I'm supposed to. So if you try to find a correlation between these two, if you use the simple formula that is Tn equals A plus n minus 1 into D. For those who may not be familiar on how to work through basics of arithmetic progression, you can definitely check out one of our previous videos where we have specified how do you find these terms out. If you simply calculate this, third term is 4, fourth term is 6, fifth term is 8 and so on. If you calculate something like this, you'll get to figure out that for n rows, what you are calculating is n into 2, or in other words, 2n minus 2. So for 3, 2 into 3 is 6. 6 minus 2 gives you 4. So you need to add 4 each time. Similarly, for 4, 2 into 4 is 8. 8 minus 2 gives us 6. Similarly, for 5, 2 into 5 is 10. 10 minus 2 gives us 8. That is exactly what we are going for. So we get to know how much interval we need to create. This we will store as a variable called interval in our program. Interval is a variable which will store 2 into n minus 2. N is number of rows minus 2, which will tell us how many or which index should I put up next. This is index number 4 because 2 into n minus 2, number of rows are 4. 8 minus 2 will get us 6. So we'll get us 6. So this is index 6. Then after that, I'm supposed to give index 12. After that, I'm supposed to give index 18 and so on. This is what we have figured out so far. So we have figured out what is the interval to go within first line. So even second line, it is the same thing. I and then H and then I, but here we are not doing anything. So, and so on, we keep doing this. Now, second line, third line, fourth line, let's figure out later on. Let's figure out why nothing is there later on. First, let's solve for this. So we have at least found one little code out here, integer called interval. Interval to 2 into 2. We know multiplication always executes first. Just in case, I will also use brackets here. So this interval variable will store for us this particular value, that is 6. So everyone is very clear with this. Interval will store this value 6. So that will know after D, if this is index 0, I'm supposed to add 6 and use index 6 here. If it is 6, I'm supposed to add 6 and give index 12. If it is 12, I'm supposed to add 6 and give index 18. Similarly, if this is index 1, I'm supposed to add 6 and give index 7 here. If you observe this we are getting in whatever we are adding in between. Let us figure that out later. Let us which initially will be 0. I'll tell you guys why we need count. I need to keep a count. I need to keep an index of this variable. If you guys observe here, storing in a string, I need two variables. One index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. To keep a value of this index, I need one variable. And to store in this other, our new array will be like this, where we store D, then 1, 2, we will keep a space, then in 3 we store L. So to keep a track of this string index, to keep a track of index of this new string, our zigzag string, to keep a count of this, we're going to create a new variable called count. You can name it as index or anything else you want. That's completely up to us. Now, here's what we're going to do. What I will do here is, I will go one row at a time. For each row at a time, what we will do is keep on going one row at a time. And in each row, I'll just point this out, so I hope everybody are very easily able to get this. For each row, we will have to calculate which is the interval. The interval is 6, then add another interval that is 6, then add another interval that is 6. I'm supposed to add interval 6 and store. But the problem is, from index 0, I'm supposed to add interval 6. I know, but how many steps am I supposed to move? How many spaces am I supposed to create? How many steps am I supposed to take before I store index 6? That is one question. That is one confusion. To do that, I need another variable called steps, because I need to know how many steps I need to take before the next variable. That number of steps I will use here also before next. That number of steps I'll use here also before next. So calculation of steps may feel like something slightly confusing. Now, if you observe, steps is related to number of rows. You may ask how is it related to number of rows? Think of this. Think about this. Take 3 rows. If you take 3 rows, D-I-G-I-T, 3 rows, step is just 1. If you take 4 rows, step is 2. If you take 5 rows, let's say D-I-G-I-T-A-L-H-I. If you take step as number of rows as 5, your step will be 3. So that is your step value. That is exactly what we need. That is the step value we require. So we found the interval. We found the interval here, that is, after some skipping of steps, we need to store which index. We found that interval. Now we need to figure out what exactly this is. So to do that, simple case, as I stated earlier, for 3 rows, our step is 1. Our step is, how will I get the value? Can I just say it is number of rows minus 2? Sounds simple. Sounds pretty simple. Steps, number of rows minus 2. But remember here, is number of rows minus 1 less than that. So if you observe here, we can say step in the first row. Step in the first row equals number of rows minus 2. Number of rows is 4. 4 minus 2 gives us 2. Absolutely correct. But steps in row number 0. Steps in row number 1 is number of rows minus 2. But there's one more thing over here. There's something else over here. So there's only one step here. Somehow we are changing the value. So if we get to see here, for row 0, number of steps are 2. For row 1, number of steps are 1. For row 2, number of steps are 0. For row 3, number of steps again are 2. So that's something slightly difficult for us to calculate. We'll solve that ahead. For now, I will create a simple formula. I'll explain this formula to you in a while. I'll create a simple formula called steps is equal to number of rows minus 2. This is what we have already known. But I will multiply it with I, where I is the row number. I'll explain why. If I is 0, we are in row number 0, number of rows is 4. 4 minus 2 into 0, that will give me 4. That may seem slightly confusing for now, not to worry. So, not number of rows, that will give me 0. 0 is not the right answer. It is based on interval. I'll take it, since as I said, it is based on interval. I stated earlier that whatever is the interval value, which is constant, it is always constant for your entire program year, minus 2 into I. If you calculate this, you'll get it. So when you take row number 0, what is the interval? 6. 6 minus 2 into 0. It's basically this. You get 6. Now that basically means I'm supposed to store 6 here. Now second, in row number 1, I'll explain this in detail. In row number 1, when I take interval minus 2 into I, let's say number of rows is 1. First row. When we go for first row, your interval is again 6. Now, when you do 6 minus 2 into 1, 6 minus 2 into 1 will be 6 minus 2 itself. That will give you 4. So that basically means now you're supposed to increase index by 4. Here you're increasing index by 6. Whereas here, apart from 6, you're also increasing index by 4. So there are two things you need to do in each of this. I'll explain this. There are two things we need to do in each program. In each row, we're supposed to increase by interval. One case, we are supposed to increase by interval. Second, also we are increasing by interval. Along with increase by interval, we need to do one more thing. We need to increase by step. In step, we'll increase till value 5. Then again till value 11, we are adding interval, then till value 17. Now similarly, for next row, we are starting with 4 and increasing 6 at a time. How will I get this 4? To get this 4 also, I'll do the same thing here. Steps equals interval minus 2 into I. Interval is 6 minus 2 into row number 2. So row number 2, I'll get 6 minus 2 into 2. So 6 minus 4, I'll get it as 2. So you basically get here with 2. Now, along with this, one more thing you can easily observe and understand is how we can calculate steps. Now, with this simple idea, let us do one small basic thing. I'll just go through one basic thing. I'll write a for loop to explain to you guys. So what we will do here is create one more integer value called I, because we need something to loop. We need something to go through loop. So we'll take for I equals 0, I less than number of rows I plus plus, because we are supposed to store one row at a time. Please remember, we are supposed to store one row at a time. Only when I store complete first row, then I can go for second row. Only when I store second row, I can go for third row. Only when I store third row, I can go for fourth row. That is why I am using one row at a time to be stored. Now, in this row, I need one more variable. For each row, I need to create something called step. As we saw, step will define which index am I supposed to use next. Which index am I supposed to use next? Here. So, formula as we did earlier, exact same formula, no difference in it. That is, here interval into 2 minus I. Sorry, interval minus 2 into I. That is what we did earlier, not into 2 minus I. So here, as we did this formula earlier. Interval minus 2 into I. This is basically what we are doing. So the interval value here is 6. That is for row 1, which is the next index I'm supposed to write here, is 6 minus 2 into I, that is 1. So 6 minus 1 is 6 minus 2, you will get it as. So you get to realize here that, sorry guys, one mistake over here. So yeah, into I. So the steps you basically get 4. So similarly, once you get to know steps for each row, you can calculate which is the next value that you're supposed to write. And there is one little confusion here. I'll just point this out very clearly because this becomes slightly confusing over here. So I will point this out very clearly right away. When you start storing character by character here, I'll just point this out. So I request everyone to clearly observe this. When we take this up, character by character in the same order, you need to ensure that whatever is being stored does not get stored in random locations. So let's just see how do we ensure to do that. So first time you may see this program, it may be slightly confusing. Not to worry, once we write more part of this program, you'll be easily able to understand. For now, let us not worry about this step. Let's not worry about it. For now, I'll just point out one little thing. Let's only go for first row. I'll write the code for first row, then we'll go for second row, so you can understand it very, very easily. So first row, the basic idea is you start with 0, you add interval, you add interval, you add interval. Till when should I add interval? My question is, till when do I keep adding interval? That is the question that will come up. Till you reach the end of your string. Like for example, here, till when do I keep adding interval? Till 18, because my string is from index 0 to 18. After that, should I add and go till 24? I should not. There's no point in it. We'll only go till 18. Similarly, in the next row, I will go till 17. After that, should I add and go till 23? No, I shouldn't do that. I should stop at 17 because 18 is the last character in our string. So we need to keep on increasing intervals until we reach length. So what I will do here is create one more for loop because we need to keep on increasing until we reach length. For j equals, we will start with the row name. Please note why I'm starting with row name is because in row 0, I'm starting with index 0. In row 1, I'm starting with index 1. In row 2, I'm starting with index 2. In row 3, I'm starting with index 3. So for each row, I'm starting with row number. That makes it clear. I hope that is clear. For each row, we are starting with row number because that is the first value. That is the index of the string we will store. So for row 0, I need to start with index 0 of my string. For row 1, I need to start with index 1 of my string. For row 2, start with index 2. For row 3, start with index 3. So let us start here. For whatever row it is, we start with index I, which is same as row number. And what is our condition? Our condition should be less than length. Remember, length is 19. There are 19 characters here, but index starts from 0 to 18. Please note and remember this, guys. Length is 19 characters, but index always starts from 0 to 18. So the moment it crosses 18, I should stop. So the condition is less than 19. I start with the same as row number. The condition is less than 19. So I start with same as row number. Condition is less than 19. I should increase. Should I increase it just by 1 or should I increase it to a higher value? I should increase it to a higher value. The value to which I should increase is my interval. the value to which I should increase is my interval here. So I will start j with 0 less than 19. I will increase it with one interval at a time. So in my string, after storing d, the next thing I will store is L. The next thing I will store is not space. Spaces we'll figure out later on. After d, the next thing we'll immediately store is L directly. So let us do that. After d, let's store L. So how am I going to store this? Remember, what is our output string? That is called zigzag output. So that is where I need to add these characters. I need to add this character to zigzag output. Then I need to add this character to zigzag output. Then I need to add this and this. So if you look at our condition here is for I equals rows 0. First I is 0. That means we are in 0th row. So what is the j value we are taking? J value we are taking as 0 itself. J starts with 0. What is it that we are comparing with? J less than length. Is 0 less than length? Length is 19. 0 is less than length is true. Since the condition is true, it goes into the for loop, and in the for loop we add the value directly over here. The value we are adding here is this particular index. How will I get this index? This index is obtained by j. So whichever is the jth character in input string, that I need to add there. So I'm gonna append here input string dot character at index j. Whichever is the character at index j is what I am adding to my zigzag output. After adding to my zigzag output, I can go for my next index. That's it. I keep on increasing. So if you use string, I'll just point this out. If you use strings, you will need to use comment. You will need to use count, because you need to increase one character at a time. If you don't use string, if you use instead of string something like string builder, you can directly use append, which keeps increasing the count. You don't need count for this. You need count only when you use string. So I will also comment this line for our reference. Now, this keeps on happening. If this keeps on happening, let us just see what will be the output here. Just to show you. So I'll just print system.out.println zigzag output. Let's see what exactly will be the output. Let's compile. Let's run. We get this. Now, the moment you get this, let's compare it with whatever we have and see how close is it. Is it somewhere relevant? You can get to see here that what's the first character we have. I'll just scroll, move this down here. I think this is I'll need to just make it smaller. Okay, now we can see the first character is D. Then the second character is L. We get L. Then the third character is G. We got G. The fourth character is Y. We got Y. The fifth character is I. We got I. The sixth character is H. We got H. Then the seventh character is again I. We got I. Then the eighth character, it's not here. It has to go directly to G. Let's see if it is G. Perfect. It is G. After G again I. After I there is S. After S it should go to I, R and E. If you look at it, it's I, R and E. So these characters in order we have got. We have got these characters in order. Done. But now question comes, what about middle characters? How will I write these middle characters in my code? Because I need to somehow write these middle characters as well. Once I write these middle characters, then I can print. Then I can figure out how to print. First row, give 2 spaces. Second row, give 1 space, then write 2, then give 1 space and write 2. Third row, write 2 and give 1 space, write 2 and give 1 space. Fourth row, write 1 and give 2 space, write 1 and give 2 space. We'll figure out how to find that logic later on. First logic, we have written all of these values. These values we have written over here. So I assume this was pretty easy and simple to work through. So I just want you guys to just go through this particular code, and we'll continue ahead from here within just a few seconds. So please go through this particular code, and I will continue in just a few seconds. So once you're able to understand this code, we'll just continue ahead. So with this code done, let us now go for the next part, that is step. Now I'll give a clue for step. We may not be able to complete the entire program in this section because the questions that you may expect here will be lengthier. For me to help you understand it completely, it may take a little more time, but I'll give you a clue. With this clue, those who are attending this, those who are trying out the same, with this clue, you can try solving this. If you're unable to solve this, we can then try figuring out how to do this in the next session. But let us try taking this up and trying to solve this. Now, if you remember, we created a formula called steps. We're going to use this formula now to go ahead in the next part of it. So let's just figure out what steps was. Steps here was a formula we tried to use to calculate the next value. So step was interval, I'll just write it down. Steps was interval minus 2 into I. Now, when we calculate interval minus 2 into I, as I stated earlier, our interval is 6. How did we calculate it as 6? We calculated it as 2 into number of rows minus 2. So step will help us. What should be in the middle that we need to write? It will help us to figure that out. So your interval here is 6. So when you take 0th row, when you take row number 0, you take interval, which is 6, minus 2 into 0. So 6 minus 2 into 0, basically 6 minus 0. That gives 6. So that means after your first value, 0th index, you're directly going to 6th index itself. You're not any step in between. That is basically what it means. So similarly, when you try to change this row number, your value keeps on changing for step. So interval is 6, 6 minus 2 into I is 1 is different, 6 minus 2 into 2 is different, so and so on. So we'll get different values that we will need over here, like these. So using these values, we will create one more for loop inside of this. We will need to create another for loop here by which we will be able to solve. I'll repeat, I'll just point out, by which we will be able to figure out what do we need to put up in between here. What are the values we need to put up in between here? Once we have figured that out as well, that basically completes our entire program over here. Then once that is done, we basically obtain the entire string. With the entire string obtained, we can then directly start with the printing of it with the right kind of spaces. So the next logic, I'll just give the clue, a simple clue to work with. The next logic is to somehow figure out this index. If you're able to figure out this particular index, what exactly this index is, if you're somehow able to figure out this index, you will then be able to move over there. I'll give you again, just as the simple steps formula states, I'll just explain it. Take row number 1. When you take row number 1, you have interval as 6. 6 minus 2 into row number 1. When you take row number 1, 6 minus 2 into 1 is 6 minus 2, which is 4. since it is 4, you're supposed to add 4 to the index 1 to get 5. Similarly, here in row number 2, 6 minus 2 into 2, that is 6 minus 4, you get 2. So since you get 2, whatever index you're getting, you're supposed to add 2 to get the next index. This is the entire clue. So you will get an idea which is the next index. So I will write the clue as well. So once you find out step, the starting index of step will be step plus this value. This value is what you basically have to subtract. So I'll just point this out again for your reference. If you are going through row number 1, this is row number 1. So 6 minus 21 is 6 minus 2, that is 4. So you basically have to take this value, add 4 to the row number. Instead of this value, you can just say it is row number. You're adding 4 to row number to get this index. And from this index, you need to do the same thing. 5 plus 6 gives you 11. 11 plus 6 gives you 17. Then 2 plus 2, you add step to 2, you get 4. 4 plus 6, you get 10. 10 plus 6, you get 16. You need to add these in between. This is the next step we are supposed to do. I will explain this next step in the coming session. But before going ahead to the next step, this is the clue that I've given. I want you to try out. Somehow, just 3 lines of code is all you need to do. Somehow use the step to somehow add it within the current string using in this for loop or outside this for loop, up to you. So when it prints, it should print this complete string without any spaces. Spaces will add and go to next row in the next part of this. So with this first part of this, I will share this code that I want you all to try out, because this is the first part of this program. It is a lengthier program. Digital part 1 question, not the complete answer, which I'll be sharing over to you for reference. I want you to try out. I hope everyone have got the logic on what to do and how to do. I will share this link over so that you can give it a try. And those who can give it a try, can solve it, can respond comments of this particular video later on, the right code for it. And let us see how many of you are able to get it right by tomorrow. So let's see how many of you will be able to get it right. We'll catch up in the next session tomorrow, continue this program. And since you all know the code, and how to calculate step as well, just try this 3 lines. If you're able to do that, you have solved 80% of the program. We just need to print it with spaces, which we'll do in the next step. So thank you for joining in, and we have provided you with this session. The second part of it, this program, will be in the next session. But before that, we have a little question for you as well. If you're watching this video some other time later on from the day of this live session, you can directly go on to the next video for the solution of this. And for those who are joining in now, if you want to go through more programs, or if you want to know about the complete training program that we provide for your placement opportunities, you can go through the description of our channel and get to know how to contact us to get a complete intensive training on technical, verbal, and aptitude to be ready for interviews. Thank you for joining in. We'll catch up in the next session.